Serbs and Croats, and not Bosnian Muslims.
You're saying that...
Yes.
Well, certainly we were very concerned about the mistreatment of the Bosnians, and we worked very hard at that. But the reason why we're not able, or we did not succeed to do it quickly enough and in time, is because the American Muslim community has not yet been sufficiently empowered. We need to build further coalitions with many other people, Christian and Jewish people, who were very concerned about the atrocities committed against the Bosnians. But again, as Ramzi pointed out, U.S. foreign policy is primarily dictated by policies of interests. And the alacrity and the quickness with which, for example, the U.S. came to the aid of Kuwait during the first Gulf War is because of the interests of oil. The issues of religion and religious war tends to intersect issues of interest, and they're governed by issues of interest. Is there a sense in the Western world a fear of Islam? Yes, there's a certain fear of Islam. And we are working very hard to combat this fear. But the fact of the matter remains that the vast majority of Muslims in the United States, in Europe, want to live there and want to be integrated into the Western fabric of society.
Okay, let me bring Anas al-Tikriti in here.
If I may, the bringing in of the issues of Bosnia and Kosovo is one that I'm very uncomfortable with for several reasons. The first being that, firstly, this happened during the mid-90s when the present format and the structure of the war on terror was still undeveloped. This developed towards the 1998s, 1999s, and the such towards the new millennium. And therefore, that was outside that context. Plus, we have to realize a very important fact. Bosnia was not the first time this had happened, it wasn't the last time this has happened. The reaction of the world was for several reasons. Firstly, it was at the doorsteps of the West. That was very, very dangerous. There was a war, an all-out war happening between a country that was threatening to spill out to Europe, to create a massive economic, socio-political, religious crisis, as well as another important fact. Something that I feel uncomfortable saying, but I have to, I'm sorry. But our brothers and my sheikh from Bosnia is white, he's fair-headed, he's blue-eyed. It matters. What happened to Rwanda? What happens in Southeast Asia? It doesn't matter that much. It's far away. We don't go to holidays over there. The Olympics weren't held over there a few years ago. It doesn't really matter.
But let me ask the Imam to answer that. I mean, you've made a number of points. Let him answer that.
The basic issue that I see is that the war on terror, as it has been prosecuted, is not a war that is driven by religious animus, primarily. It is driven by geopolitical interests, by economic interest, by the desire to control oil, by the desire to have an expanded geostrategic location in the world.
But you're saying there's a pattern here, aren't you? You're saying there's a pattern against Muslims, time after time after time.
Absolutely.
But there's a partnership. To counter that, there's a partnership between the United States and many Muslim nations. The point we're trying to make here is that the prosecution of the war on terror is not predicated on an anti-Islamic agenda primarily. It's not driven by that.
You say primarily, so there is some element of it.
I'm saying it's driven, there is an element of fear in the West about Islam. There's no question about it.
Justified fear?
There's a fear because
absolutely not. I think that if we read through history, both modern and ancient, I think that we always have this dissident element within all sects and ideologies. We have never had this draconian practice against an entire community of faith.
I can tell you that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the West. It is the fastest growing religion in America. It's the fastest growing religion in...
That's despite all of us.
That's despite all of us.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason for it. That accounts for the fear. The fear is based upon the fact that by the year 2010, the 4 largest cities in Holland, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, The Hague, and Utrecht, are going to be majority Muslim cities.
The Egyptian weekly, Rosa al-Yusuf, said last year, Muslims must no longer remain silent. Our fear of speaking out has become the terrorists' fifth column.
What I reject is that the presumption we haven't been speaking out. I, as a person, I'm only 36 years old, but 20 years of my life, I've been going around preaching modernism, preaching interaction with the West. I reject entirely the suggestion by the United Kingdom, by the United States, by the West generally, that I have been silent all this time, and how come, I've always been relaxed and, laid my legs straight out and never said anything, and now I come to defend you.
Okay.
I have always been speaking.
But that point, Anas, hold on, Tim. But that point, Anas, is a function of the media. And the media we have this battle within America today. and continuously bang against the media. They don't give adequate coverage to us Muslims and to Muslim moderates. They give undue attention to those who give a negative image of Islam. But those of us who try to give a positive image of Islam are sidelined.
So it's the media's fault.
Not a policy issue. It's a very important difference. The majority of Westerners, the majority of Americans and US policy is not guided by anti-Islam as Islam, but guided by other factors.
There's a gentleman up there who's been waiting very patiently, sir.
My question is this, that the war against terrorism has become a war against certain types of Islam. The U.S. wants to dictate which Islam they want to enter the country, which Islam they want to put on TV, which Islam they want to talk out, which Islam to be in the books. But the other types of Islam, the people who are speaking moderate Islam in other places that agree with the U.S. interests, they don't get any voice.
You don't think they have a right to fight militant Islam, Islam that crashes planes into the World Trade Center?
The Muslims should themselves fight their militant Islam, and they should do that through a Muslim discourse. Someone coming outside and dictating the terms will not do anything for the Muslim extremists. It will just breed more extremism.
So you're saying that some of the Islamic clergy should have done more?
I believe so. I believe it was upon the Grand Mufti and other people like him to speak out.
He says you should have spoken out more.
I think I'm speaking very loudly, but it depends whether somebody wants to hear. What I believe, it is for the media to make news at night, better to have some Hamzas who will tell that Muslims should kill Christians and Jews than to have some moderate, boring Muslim clergy to speak about peaceful Islam. And this is what media is making. I don't want to sound like blame the media. That's the easier way. There are some people who are irresponsible and behaving on behalf of Islam. I believe, yes, I agree with you that we should be louder and tell them that they don't do this on our behalf. We Muslims want to live in peace with other people. And we have proven this through history that we are capable to do so.
Is that loud enough and clear enough for you?
I'm sorry, you missed the point. The United States government itself funds certain initiatives within the Muslim countries and within the Muslim discourse that they want to have. Some people aren't given the voices, like the Grand Mufti is speaking. I agree with him totally. I think people, for example, Tariq Ramadan wasn't allowed to come to the States because they don't want that type of Islam. I think the government is funding Al-Hurra TV because they want Al-Hurra TV. They don't want Al Jazeera. They want Radio Sawa. They don't want Muslim people talking about this.
But why you are opposing what Americans are trying to do for Muslims? I don't think that anyone can change the content of Islam, even Americans, on anybody. But if Americans don't do anything, we blame America because it doesn't do. But if it does something, then we blame it because it is doing. But the United States is the only country in the world that can do and want to do something in the world. There are some people who can do, but they don't want, and others people want to do, but they cannot. I think we should be more reasonable and open for others who want to help us, and of course, provided that we help ourselves.
Okay.
Because how can somebody help me if I cannot help myself?
All right, let me bring...
Just very quickly,
very quickly,
Tariq Ramadan was prevented from entering in this particular case because he made statements against Israel, just to point the issue of the Israeli connection. However, having said that, the issue, we are challenged in the West. A friend of mine, a journalist who really is very sympathetic to our situation, says the problem that the Western has, they're confused. They can understand political liberation movements. They can understand, for example, Political Front for the Liberation of Palestine. What they cannot understand is Jama'ah Islamiyya, Hezbollah. Why is it, they said, that throughout the Muslim world, political liberation movements use the vocabulary of Islam? And until and unless we Muslims can help them de-link this link, it is hard for them not to see Islam as militant. So part of the battle that we have, both within our own tradition and vis-a-vis the West, is to make these de-linkages, if you will.
Okay, question from the front, please.
Yes, I have a question to Mr. Sir Ramzi. You said that the war in this region in the Middle East is against wealth or geopolitics reasons. Is that right? Okay, do you think that it's a coincidence that they only want the oil of Afghanistan, or the oil of Iraq, all the resources in the other Arabic or Islamic countries, and why not they take the other resources that is in different places in the world?
Your point is that America's interest in oil is because it is in Islamic states.
No, the interest
They do
in oil.
happen to have a preponderance of